You opened your phone this morning before you even got out of bed. Maybe you told yourself you were just checking the time, but then you saw a headline, and then another, a disaster somewhere, a threat, a conflict brewing on the other side of the world. And even though none of it touched your life directly, you kept reading. You scrolled further. You felt worse with every swipe, and you could not stop. That is not a personal failure. That is not weakness. That is one of the oldest survival mechanisms your species ever developed, running in the wrong century. Your brain is addicted to bad news, not because something went wrong with it, because everything went exactly right for a world that no longer exists. Go back roughly 200,000 years. Your ancestors woke up every single morning inside a world that was actively trying to kill them. Predators, rival groups, contaminated water, sudden weather, spoiled food, an infected wound that had no treatment. The threats were not abstract. They were immediate, physical, and personal. Missing one of them could end everything. So the brain that survived was not the calm brain. It was not the brain that focused on pleasant things and stayed present in the moment. The brain that survived was the one that never stopped scanning, the one that treated every rustle in the grass as a potential lion, the one that weighted threatening information far more heavily than neutral information, because ignoring a threat could kill you, but ignoring good news could not. Psychologists call this negativity bias. The research is well established. Roy Baumeister at the University of Queensland has spent years documenting the principle that bad is stronger than good across almost every domain of human experience. Negative events have greater impact on your mood than equivalent positive events. Negative information is processed more thoroughly. Negative memories are retained more reliably. Your brain is not broken, it is calibrated. Calibrated for a world where the cost of missing something bad was death. Now take that ancient calibration and hand it a smartphone. Every time you open a news app, your brain does not register headlines as distant information about strangers in other places. It registers them as signals, threat signals. The same circuitry that once scanned a dark savanna is now scanning your feed, and it is finding exactly what it evolved to find: danger, conflict, instability, things going wrong, and it flags every single one of them as potentially relevant to your survival. Here is the mechanism underneath that compulsion. When your brain detects a potential threat, it releases a cocktail of neurochemicals designed to focus your attention. Norepinephrine sharpens your alertness. Cortisol primes your body for action. And here is the cruel irony. That state of heightened alertness feels urgent, almost electric. Your attention narrows. The bad headline pulls you in. You need to know more. You need to know how bad it is. You need to know if it is getting worse. That is not curiosity. That is threat assessment. The same process your ancestor used to determine whether the sound in the tall grass was a predator or just wind. Mark Trussler and Stuart Soroka at McGill University ran a fascinating experiment that revealed just how deep this runs. They tracked participants' eye movements as they browsed a news website, telling them they could read whatever they liked. Then they measured what people actually looked at versus what they said they preferred. Almost universally, participants claimed to want positive stories, and almost universally, their eyes went straight to negative ones. The brain's threat detection system operated independently of conscious preference. People chose bad news without knowing they were choosing it, and the modern media ecosystem has learned to exploit exactly this. Every algorithm that decides what content reaches your eyes is trained on one signal above all others: engagement. And the content that generates the most engagement, the content that keeps your attention locked to the screen the longest, is the content that triggers your threat detection system the hardest. Outrage, fear, uncertainty, conflict. Not because these things are more important, but because your ancient brain treats them as more urgent. The algorithm did not create negativity bias. It discovered it, and then it built an entire machine designed to feed it. This is why doomscrolling is so difficult to stop mid-scroll. Every alarming headline triggers a small hit of the neurochemicals that say, keep scanning, keep monitoring, do not look away until you understand the threat. And the feed is infinite. The threat never resolves. There is always one more thing to check. Your brain, designed for a world where threats were finite and local, is now running threat assessment on the entire planet in real time, and it is never allowed to conclude that you are safe. Graham Davey, a professor of psychology at the University of Sussex, has spent years studying the psychological effects of news consumption. His research found that negative news does not just make viewers feel bad about the world, it actively amplifies personal anxieties entirely unrelated to the news content. If you watched a disturbing news broadcast and then were asked about a personal worry in your own life, you rated that personal worry as more serious, more threatening, and less solvable. The bad news did not just affect your view of the world, it infected your view of your own life. The threat detection system, once activated, does not stay contained to the specific threat that triggered it. It floods your entire perception. Now, here is the counterintuitive part. You did not develop this because your ancestors were pessimists. They were not gloomy or fearful people by nature. They were extraordinarily attuned people, attuned to the difference between safe and unsafe, between trustworthy and deceptive, between the familiar and the unknown. That attunement kept them alive long enough to have children, who eventually had you. The problem is not the attunement. The problem is the mismatch. Your threat detection hardware is running a software update that never came. It was designed for a world where threats were local, physical, and personally actionable. Hear a strange sound, investigate or flee, notice a rival, prepare, see a storm coming, find shelter. The information led to an action, the action resolved the threat, and the neurochemical alarm could quiet down. In a world of 24-hour global news, the threats are never local, rarely physical, and almost never personally actionable. You cannot outrun a geopolitical crisis. You cannot flee a financial collapse. You cannot fight a distant conflict. The alarm triggers, the threat assessment loop begins, and there is no action that resolves it. So the alarm does not quiet down. It just keeps running, burning low-grade cortisol through your system, keeping you in a state of low-level vigilance that never fully releases. This is what researchers call a mismatch disease, a condition that arises not because something in the body failed, but because an ancient adaptation is running in an environment radically different from the one it evolved for. Your wisdom teeth were designed for a jaw that ate raw, tough food. Your lower back was designed for a creature that walked on all fours. And your threat detection system was designed for a world that had roughly 150 people in it, where you knew every threat personally and could do something about it. You now have access to the fears of 8 billion people. The evolutionary trick that makes you addicted to bad news is not a glitch in your wiring. It is the most reliable survival feature your species ever produced, running so faithfully that it cannot tell the difference between a lion in the grass and a notification on your lock screen. It treats them both as equally worthy of your full, undivided, escalating attention. And knowing that does not make you immune to it. The system operates beneath conscious awareness, faster than rational thought, in the same subcortical structures that regulate breathing and heartbeat. You cannot think your way out of negativity bias any more than you can think your way out of blinking when something flies at your face. But you can understand what is happening. You can recognize the feeling, that urgent, pulling, almost physical compulsion to keep reading, keep scrolling, keep monitoring, as your ancient brain doing exactly what it was built to do. You can notice the alarm, and then you can decide whether the lion is actually there. Tonight, when you reach for your phone and that pull begins, the one that says just one more headline, just a little more information, just check once more, that pull is 200,000 years old. It kept your ancestors alive through predators and famines and everything the world could throw at them. It brought you here. And now it is asking you to read one more story about a world that is very far away, in a body that is sitting completely still, waiting for a threat that will never arrive at your door. The world your brain was built for is gone, but the brain is still here, still scanning, still certain that somewhere out there, just past the next scroll, there is something you absolutely cannot afford to miss.